Good morning, and welcome to All People's Church Unitarian Universalist. My name is Mary Ann Clark, and I am your co-celebrant this morning. In the pulpit this morning is Dr. Kendra Weddle, who is currently serving as a scholar in residence at North Haven Church in Dallas. Prior to this position, she was professor of religious studies for over 10 years at Texas Wesleyan University. And before that, she was an associate professor of religious studies at George Fox University in Newberg, Oregon. She is especially interested in the intersection of faith and feminism and is working for justice as faith in action. Kendra lives in Irving with her husband, Brian. Brian, are you here? Yes, I see you over there. With her husband, Brian, and their chocolate Labrador retriever, Rue. Our Sunday service is a shared time of worship for all present as we gather for music, spoken words, and a time of reflection and inspiration as a religious community. Let us come together in a spirit of compassion and respect for ourselves and for others attending this service. We especially welcome those who are visiting today. If you haven't yet done so, please sign in at the visitors table by the front door, where you can be placed on our mailing list to receive our weekly emails and the monthly newsletters. Before we continue with the service, there are some announcements. We have an announcement from the church board. Next Sunday, May 21st, is our spring congregational meeting at 1 p.m. after the service. Religious education will serve a lunch, and then we will gather for the meeting. At the spring meeting, we approved the budget for the fiscal year 2024, so it's an important one, starting in July. We will hear reports on church activities, including membership and religious education. Please plan on attending. Are there any other announcements? Misha will now lift our hearts with music.
Thank you, Misha. You certainly lifted our hearts. Hear now these opening words that come from the Commission on Common Worship. From the fragmented world of our everyday lives, we gather together in search of wholeness. By many cares and preoccupations, by diverse and selfish aims, are we separated from one another and divided within ourselves? Yet we know that no branch is utterly severed from the tree of life that sustains us all. Welcome to worship.
We now invite you to rise in body or in spirit for the chalice lighting, the opening hymn, and our spoken affirmation. Our chalice lighting words come to us from the Oberlin UU Fellowship in Ohio. We light this chalice to find inner peace, love for one another, and faith in ourselves. Also, to be welcoming to whomever we meet, and kind to all living creatures. So gather round this light of hope as we share this time together. Please join now in singing our opening hymn, number 34 in the Gray Hymnal, Though I May Speak with Bravest Fire. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge for freedom, to serve others in community, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with creation. Thus do we covenant with one another.
I now invite all of those who are young or young at heart. Meet me up front. That's great. Oh, how fun. That'll work. It's nice to see you all this morning. When we were starting the service, did you notice the prayer was about breathing? Did you notice that? Did you pay attention to the words? Yeah, it was about breathing. So next week when you hear it, listen and you'll hear it again. So I wanted to ask you, Do you have any idea how many breaths you might take in an hour? Okay, so we have everything from 1,000 to 1,000,000. That's great.
Yeah, because we're breathing almost every second.
Yes.
Almost every millisecond we grow. And that would round out about 2 million. Somewhere in the middle.
Right. Okay, so we take a lot of breaths. Now, do you ever think about it? Like when you're breathing, you don't think about it?
Sometimes. It really depends on the situation.
Okay.
Like if you're focusing on your breath, stress yourself.
Oh, okay, so do you do that sometimes?
I take deep breaths in and then
Yeah.
I breathe out and make random noises. It's actually from one of my favorite series, and I tried it one time thinking, oh, this is so stupid. It's not going to help. It helps.
It helps, exactly.
More than just breathing in there.
Right, so you are definitely onto something. So paying attention to our breathing helps us, especially when we're in stressful situations. So I love that you're learning that so young. It took me much longer than it did you. You're much smarter than I am. So I want to ask you, as you go throughout today and the rest of the week, to start thinking about your breathing and maybe try again what you suggest, that when I'm feeling a little stressed or a little upset, that I breathe deeply and maybe make a funny sound when you breathe out. That's a good one too. I love that. You all have good ideas. Thank you for meeting me this morning. I look forward to seeing you again. Have a good rest of the day, and Misha will play us out.
The purpose of this church is to encourage all who gather here to grow more generous in spirit and in action. This is the great end of all the world's faith traditions, to bring the human closer to the divine by acts of creation and compassion. We now take an offering that allows us to exercise that all-important generosity of spirit, an offering that will support this church and its many ministries. It is our custom to share the undesignated cash offerings that are collected each week. We do this on a quarterly basis for nonprofit or charitable organization. Our current Share the Plate recipient is the Texas UU Justice Ministry, the statewide network in Austin whose mission is to educate and advocate for public policies that reflect our UU values. The gifts of the congregation will be most gratefully received. Will the ushers and the choir please come forward?
Archibald Lampman was from Canada, and he lived from 1861 to 1899, only 38 years. He was a poet for the Voices of the Earth, and it was published in Canada He was in 1899 after he died. And the sonnet talks about the vivid portrayal of the landscape in Canada. Voices of the Earth by Archibald Lampman. We heard the music of the spheres, or the song of stars to stars. But there are sounds more deep than human joy or tears. The sound that nature uses in her common rounds. The fall of streams, the cry of winds that strain the mighty oak, the roaring of the sea's surge, the might of thunder breaking afar off, or rain that falls by the minutes in the summer night. These are the voices of Earth's secret soul, uttering the mystery from which she came. To him who hears them, grief beyond control, or joy, inscrutable without a name, wakes in his heart thoughts bedded there imperiled before the birth and the making of this earth. Voices of the Earth.
reading this morning comes from the tradition of Hinduism. Once upon a time, a merchant who was vacationing in a small village went to see the village market. At one place, he saw a man with a genie, and he asked, "What are you selling, my friend?" "My genie," replied the man. "Well, what does it do?" "Everything you want to get done," the vendor said. "It makes the impossible possible." "Then why do you sell it?" the merchant asked. "Because I have no ambitions left," the vendor said. "It is a wish-fulfilling genie, but it's very exhausting. It cannot stay idle, and all the time it needs a job, a new project, or otherwise it destroys what it creates." "I have lots of ambitions and lots of jobs to be done," the merchant said. "I'll buy it." When they reached the place where the merchant stayed, the genie said, "Now, sir, tell me what I can do for you. Your satisfaction is guaranteed, but before enjoying it, you must tell me my next job." "Well, your first job," the merchant said, "is to build boundary walls and mark my sites." The genie clapped his hands and said, "Your sites have all been enclosed, sir. And now what is my next job?" "You really are a wish-fulfilling genie. I'm so happy to have you. Your next job is to create buildings on these sites." The genie clapped again. "It is done, my master. The factories, the theater halls, the swimming pool, and the markets are now all crowded with people." "Fantastic," said the merchant. "Now, I want you to make me king of the world. Build me a palace, organize a coronation, invite all of the important people, bring poets and musicians, and let the dancers dance and entertainers entertain." The genie clapped again and said, "You have been accepted as the solemn monarch of planet Earth. Your crown is right here. Dress yourself up and enjoy being the most powerful and important person on the planet. But before you leave, tell me your next job." Well, the merchant became numb. All of his desires were fulfilled. Suddenly, he remembered the merchant's warning. If he could not keep the genie employed, everything he had achieved so far would be destroyed. Well, drops of perspiration started dripping down from his forehead. Only one person could possibly help him. "Genie," he commanded, "before I become the emperor of the planet Earth, I would like to get the blessings of my spiritual teacher. Please take me to the Holy One's cave in the Himalayas." So the genie clapped again, and there he was. "Well, bless me, Holy One, bless me," the businessman said. "I am in great trouble. I bought a wish-fulfilling genie this morning, and all of my desires got fulfilled. But I bought this genie on one condition, that I have to keep him engaged or he will destroy what he has created. And now I don't know what to do with him." The Holy One was sitting naked on a straw mat and greeted the merchant with a radiant smile. "Don't worry, my son. It's very easy to provide this genie with a never-ending job. But first, relax." "I cannot relax," the merchant said. "I'm agitated, anxious, excited, terribly disturbed and afraid. Help me." "Listen carefully, my child," the Holy One said. ask the genie to bring the biggest bamboo pole he can get, and then order him to plant it inside the ground very firm and tight. After the pole is firmly fixed to the ground, ask the genie to climb up and down it until further ordered. This will keep him busy, and you will enjoy your life undisturbed and fearlessly. Well, how stupid am I that I could not think of such a simple solution, the merchant gasped. When one is obsessed by fear and anxiety, one cannot think of such simple solutions, the Holy One said. First, you were blinded by your ambitions and you bought the genie. Then, when the genie became too fast in fulfilling your desires, you got scared by the speed with which he carried out your orders. Then you got nervous by the imaginary fear of destruction. Go now and feel free. The Holy One then paused for a moment. But before you go, know this. I too have a genie. And then he showed him his meditation beads. We now will recognize the names and milestones.
Time in our service, we pause to honor and to give time and attention to those things most important to us. We gather here for healing and for peace in our hearts, and to honor our time together with the shared stories and news from the congregation. Each week, there is a journal outside the entrance to the sanctuary where you can write a message of memory or hope before the service. Also, at any time during the service, you're welcome to come forward and light a candle in our meditation center here at the side of the chancel. Today, from our Book of Memory and Hope, we have the following. Today is Don't Forget to Feed Me Sunday, if you have a bit to spare. There's a green envelope on the cabinet just outside the sanctuary for your donation. And write down your name and the amount so that it can be added to the roster of heroes. Let us open our minds and hearts to the place of quiet, to the silent prayer for the healing of pain, and for the soft, gentle coming of love. Please now settle comfortably and pause for a few moments of quiet meditation to uphold and lift the sorrows and celebrations, both spoken and unspoken among us. And then Misha will lift our hearts with music.
My first experience of Sabbath, heavy with the thou shalt not rather than the thou shall, was at the swimming pool. Now, it was the only source of entertainment in my small town, and it was only on Sundays that the farm kids, of which I was one, had the freedom to swim instead of work. And so I was thinking about the friends who I would see that afternoon at the pool, only to find out that the guy I thought would be there turned out wouldn't. It turns out he was forbidden to swim on Sundays because he was a PK, preacher's kid, of the pastor at the Reformed Presbyterian Church in town, and they had to ensure that Sabbath rest didn't include anything fun. But I wonder how much we have lost our disregard for the idea of Sabbath. So let's try on a couple questions, and I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands. When was the last time you carved out an entire day to spend doing whatever gives you energy and a full sense of respite? And what did that day entail? Did you read? Maybe you watched a movie or listened to some music. Did you walk outside? Did you bake? Maybe you called a friend. In whatever way or ways you invested a day, how did it make you feel? Can you remember? Were you able to make it through the entire day without being productive? Or did you give in to that need to check your email? Or maybe throw in a quick load of laundry? Maybe just take the vacuum on a quick spin around the floor? I want to invite us this morning to think about Sabbath with a few words in mind, like restoration, renewal, revitalization, wholeness. Writer Anne Lamott once said that one of the things she knows for sure is that most everything will work again if you unplug it for a moment, including us. And I think we know she's right. We've kind of experienced that she's right, so why is it so hard for us to do? Well, I think one of the characteristics of Hinduism that I appreciate so much is their teaching that takes seriously the life stages that are connected to religious aims. So the first stage involves developing a foundation for spiritual growth and generally occurs between the ages of 8 and 20. Now, the second stage focuses more on the place of work and meeting social demands, doing our part to maintain society. The third stage is marked by a shift from work and society to pursuing religious goals. Now, in ancient society, this meant withdrawing from the family and going into the forest to live alone. But today, that can occur anywhere, but with the intention on spiritual development as opposed to productivity. And then finally, the last stage is letting go. There are a couple things, a couple ideas that resonate with me when I think about these stages. The first is that the God of productivity only gets one stage. 3 other stages it doesn't get control. Think about how different our culture might be in terms of its demands. We hardly are out of our diapers before people start making claims about what we will produce. She's good with numbers. He argues so much he'll definitely be an attorney. They run faster and are more athletic than anyone I've seen. They'll surely get a college scholarship. By the time we're in high school, people are asking us what we plan to do with our lives. And college is worse, my goodness. Woe to you if you haven't figured it out by the time you graduate. Or perhaps in light of the pandemic, now the mantra is to go straight from high school into making money. Productivity is happy to get its hands on us early. So we spend most of our lives driven by productivity, only to arrive at the age of retirement and suddenly feel so bereft we don't know what to do. No longer viewed as a productive part of society, we're left to become smaller and smaller, more invisible, until we fade away. Like Hinduism, we in our American culture have an idea, a possible practice that was once built into our social fabric, but we've learned to ignore it pretty well. Do you remember when most everything shut down on Sundays? It's still that way in other parts of the world. I mean, I recall when Sunday felt slower than all the other days. It stretched out for hours, compelling a different way of being in it. But hardly now Sundays are distinct. There's church, sure. But otherwise, the same frenetic pushes us to do something palpable the rest of the day. It's as if now we put pressure on someone if they intentionally create a Sabbath for themselves. And now that we all have computers that we carry around in our hands all day long, we're burning ourselves out faster than ever before. We go and go all day long, and then we wonder why we can't sleep at the end of it. What we're doing to ourselves isn't just physical, it's emotional and it's spiritual. And our constant drive to produce rather than to rest and to heal is having devastating effects on our health and our ability to create community. For example, Dr. Vivek Murthy, the current Surgeon General, recently cited loneliness as an epidemic in the U.S. Did you hear that? Loneliness is now an epidemic. Lacking meaningful connection can increase the risk of premature death on par with smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Other physical consequences of loneliness include a 29% increased risk of heart disease, a 32% increased risk of stroke, a 50% increased risk of developing dementia. And on top of that, almost 50% of Americans report experiencing significant loneliness. Wow. It is an epidemic. We sometimes might push back on these statistics by thinking we have plenty of people in our lives. We text with them multiple times a day. We see friends every week at church. Maybe we go out to eat, attend a concert, go to a sporting event. We're always doing something. And that's all fine and good. But there's an important distinction to be made between being around people and connecting with them. In our worship at the altar of productivity, we have trampled under the life-sustaining practice of real rest and relaxation, and space to develop relationships with others and even the divine breather. Think, for example, of how when you were working at a frantic pace, I do this all the time, we hold our breath. You notice that? It's as if the less we breathe, the more we can accomplish, we think. So y'all, I just want to say that I think we need to step off this hamster wheel and evaluate what we are doing to ourselves, to our relationships, to our communities, and to society. So what if we take this idea of Sabbath as healing seriously? What if the sources who've built the idea of Sabbath into our religion toolboxes understood that we need Sabbath as a regular practice because it heals us? And one way to think about healing is that it makes wholeness possible. It helps us remember who we are. A few years ago, I was listening to a song, and the lyrics included this line that really spoke to me. You had a dream. You misunderstood. You thought we were separate. But now you hear my voice. Relax and breathe deeply now. I loved that over and over. Relax and breathe deeply now. And one of the things about this song that moved me was that I could physically feel myself loosening. As I focused on relaxing, the muscles just all seemed to melt a bit. But it was as if I needed an invitation to breathe, to let go of my constriction and to allow myself to unspool from all of the frenetic pacing and constant stress that had me so tightly wound. Well, recently I read an article by Vivek Murthy and his wife Alice Chen, and they wrote this at the very beginning of the pandemic. So given the timing, it's quite a prescient article. And they provided some very practical steps that I think might help us to remember Sabbath and to see Sabbath as healing, but not only in an individual context, but in the context of community. How can we do this together? So here's their first suggestion. Spend 15 minutes each day connecting with somebody you don't live with. So that means whoever might be living under the same roof, but they don't count, someone else. And this could be to just send them a text or to call, to check in with them, just letting them know that you're thinking about them. You know how that gives you a boost, right? We've all had that experience where someone came up to us and said, you know what? I was thinking about you the other day. And all of a sudden you feel seen, you feel valued, you feel connected. And we can do that. And it's important that we do that. A second suggestion they make is to spend time with people without distractions. Maybe you all can remember the first time you were in a conversation with someone who now was carrying the phone with them all the time. Like, I remember it very clearly. I was in my campus office, and a student had come in to see me, sat down in the chair across me. I came out around my desk, sat in another chair so we could have a close conversation. All of a sudden, their cell phone started ringing, and they said, "Oh, stop, wait a minute," and answered the call. I was like, wow. But I think that it's easy for us to become distracted when we are communicating with someone else. Let's try not to do that. Let's try not to be thinking about how we're going to respond, and instead just take in what they're saying, feel it. A third suggestion they suggest is to practice moments of solitude. Now, building solitude is not the same thing as loneliness, right? Because it almost seems like those things are oxymorons, but they're not. Solitude is a place of comfort and of being in tune with ourselves. It's a way of living that enables us to clearly be attuned to others when we're with them. If all the time that we're alone, we're on our devices, receiving pings and notices, we're not experiencing solitude. And when we don't experience solitude, it makes it difficult for us to be with others when we are. So we can do this. It doesn't take all day. It doesn't take a lot. All it takes is starting small. So what about simply pausing each day, taking a full breath in and breath out when we move from one task to another? We finished eating, and now we're going to wash the dishes. One breath in, one breath out. We're leaving work and getting in our car. One breath in, one breath out. If we can learn to build moments of solitude and pause rather than, oh, I have this moment, let me check my cell phone. It will help us in our connecting with ourselves and with others. Now, the final suggestion that they have is to reach out and help others. So we need to know when to respond to the needs of others and to do so with empathy. Now, let's not just settle for pity, right? I'm sorry that you're doing that you're going through that. But let's go for real on empathy. I hear you. I'm opening myself to feel your pain, and I'm willing to share this difficult moment with you. We have to be clear that we don't presume to know what others need. So let's ask them, what do you need of me in this moment? And know, too, that for a lot of situations, all they need is for us to be there and be with them. Now, in closing, I want to add just one little practice that we can all do that doesn't require that 24-hour day, right? I know that's a hard goal for us, but we can do this. What if we all built a little Sabbath into our day by doing a short breathing exercise? Imagine, if you will, in your mind's eye, just a box. And I'm guessing many of you already know and practice this. But imagine a box, and each box has a number. 4 is a good place to start. 4 on each of those sides of that box. And as you breathe in, you count to 4, and that's one side of the box. And as you breathe in again, you hold that for a count of 4, and that's another side of the box. And then you let out your breath for another count of 4, the third side of that box. And again, you hold your breath at the bottom for another count of 4, for a final side of the box. Let's try it. Just a moment. Breathe in and imagine your box. So breathe in for 4. Hold it for 4. Breathe out for 4. And hold it at the bottom for 4. Do this throughout your day at any point, and I will suggest for you that this creates a mini Sabbath that then provides a foundation that we can build upon. Because the truth is, we don't have to berate ourselves for not carving out Sabbaths in our lives, and we don't need to move mountains to shore up one day a week to take a real break. But we do need to remember to value Sabbath more than the God of production. Because as it turns out, that God is masquerading as ourselves, believing that we can live happily ever after without true rest, without true wholeness. And the only ones we're fooling is ourselves. So, instead of being duped, let's just take a break. Amen. Let's sing together. Our closing hymn is number 89, Come, My Way, My Truth, My Life. Let's stand and sing together.
The reading for Extinguishing Our Chalice is from Amy Zucker Morgenstern. Never has it been more true than now. We extinguish this flame, but sparks within us remain alight. From each of us in our supposed solitude, the signals buzz and hum, sparkling through space one to another, connecting us invisibly but palpably. We are one, and from every window our light shines.
I want to invite you to stay around after the benediction for coffee and conversation. So friends, as we go forth from here, let's remember to breathe and take a break. Amen.